puzzle games are the theme for the third and final Steam Next Fest February 2024 edition video series. 25 demos are included in this video, and they largely start from my most favourite ones through to the ones that I was least confident and happy with. And I'll tell you where things stop getting put on my wish list, because the vast majority of this video is me adding stuff to the wish list. So take it as read for the first 75% of this video. I'm adding it to the wish list and picking these games up. I'll kick off with my favourite demo of the bunch though, and it was Botany Manor. This is an absolutely gorgeous 3D puzzle game which is all around planting and cultivating nature. And you do it around this 1800 style manor that looks beautiful, feels like it could be in real life. And I really like the vibrant, beautiful colours that feel quite pastel and summery, watercoloury. Reminds me very much of the game The Witness, actually, because that was a very vibrant and beautiful colour palette as well. The beauty with all of this is that there's an awful lot being told for environmental storytelling, and the way how, as you move around the manor, the music cues come in, the way how you pick up various different plants and then you need to look at the different environments to kind of go, okay, I need to adjust the temperature of the atrium or the greenhouse or whatever it is that you're in, water it appropriately, put in the right soil. But you kind of need to pick this all up from clues in the environment and pop it in your diary and then kind of wander off. It just really gave me that wholesome but educational vibe that just strikes a really perfect balance, and Botany Manor will be an absolute day one purchase for me. I was immensely impressed and super excited to get into it. The next game on this list is a sequel, Please Touch the Artwork 2, but it's a sequel that is totally different to the original whilst keeping the same concept. I reviewed the original when it came out because I absolutely adored it, and it was around looking at artwork and kind of touching and moving around the artwork so that you could like solve mazes or move things together so that it created different patterns or whatever it was. Please Touch the Artwork 2 now has you wandering around inside pieces of art like a point and click adventure. So it's taking the same idea of you moving around inside pieces of art and inside frames and things like that, but it's taken it in a totally different genre. But it works really well. You're looking at like stitching back together pieces of broken fabric in the back of the frame so that the piece of art can be completed. You're busy going around collecting things that are hidden, almost like hidden object environment games in the different paintings. But they're all set up in a way that makes it feel like you're wandering around a artistic universe. It's really unique and interesting, and it took me by surprise how different this game is to the first one, whilst still feeling like it's part of the same theme. Really interesting direction. It's not often that you get a sequel that dares to be bold, but Please Touch Your Artwork 2 certainly feels like that, and I'll be supporting it with a day one purchase. Next up is the creepy game in this puzzle list, and it's called Miniatures. But it's creepy in a way how it depicts everyday actions and objects in a really creepy, off-settling way. And so during this demo, you're putting together like pieces of IKEA furniture, for want of a better phrase, and we all know the panic and horror of that. So you're busy like touching like screwdrivers and trying to knock in nails with hammers and things like that. And it starts off quite sedate and cute, and the artwork kind of made me go, oh, this feels like it's a hand-drawn thing and it's all very cute. But then it starts to get a bit sinister with like white noise from vinyl kind of creaking and cracking, and then like the furniture starts to fall apart. And it's as if you're trying to contain furniture that's trying to burst out feelings and emotions and like just general evil. It's really weird, but it's so cleverly done. I was entranced by this game and went through the demo at pace several times because I just wanted to see like how it all unfolds, and yeah, it was engrossing. So Miniatures, day one purchase for me as well. Ouros is a really interesting and intriguing game as well, and it scratches my itch for the need of minimalistic but aesthetically pleasing puzzle games that have very simple mechanics, but then they just keep on evolving and doing and making the most out of the simple mechanic. With this game, what you're doing is twisting and manipulating a almost like rubber band trajectory of an orbit of a planet in a 2D plane. So you're busy pulling the lines around to create curves. The thing will fold in on itself. It will create its own almost like Ouroboros in a way, where it starts to eat itself as it keeps going around this endless cycle. But it's up to you to twist and manipulate it so that you hit all of the different checkpoints in the right order at the right time. So it seemed really simple to begin with. It started to give real glimpses of where the game was going, and I was hooked. And it's just so aesthetically pleasing, and it just made me go, this will also be a day one purchase for me. Next up is Dungeon Inn, and this is probably the sole board gamey style game in this puzzle collection. And I'm going to struggle to try and make this sound succinct, but you look after a dungeon inn that is being frequented by two opposing factions, and they both come down the sides of the screen, one to the left and one to the right. And what you're doing is busy buying and putting different objects on the path to speed them up, slow them down, stop the different people, so that they don't arrive and leave at exactly the same time and then start fighting. Sometimes that's inevitable and you do have to then pick sides on the fight, but what you're trying to do is to appease both sides by giving them a good dungeon inn experience before they go into the dungeon, but also, if you do have to be in battles, to keep flipping sides and helping out each other, so that they don't get suspicious that you're working for the other side, also while trying to keep your inn up and running and earning a profit. It was really complicated. Well, not complicated, it was complex, but I could understand what was going on, and it just had a constant flow to it, because you get these different missions that you have to complete each week. If you don't do it, then the inn shuts down. So the stakes keep getting higher and higher and higher and higher. And yeah, I was really intrigued and engrossed in this game. And again, another day one purchase. I'd never heard of this game before Steam Next Fest. A total sleeper hit that is now a very much most wanted game for me. The next one, again another day one, is The Cable Guy. And I feel like this game was made for anyone who really likes cable ties. Because what you're doing is looking after various different offices, and they're set up for getting everyone connected to the internet and to get power. So some people are in PC terminals, some have got laptops and require Wi-Fi, and you're trying to drag around all of the cables to make everything connected and alive. But everyone's on like different servers, so their different colours need to all match up together. They'll cross over. Some need Wi-Fi, and that's like an area of effect that you put out. But you can't overload things. It's really quite complicated, and it just kept sprawling and sprawling and sprawling in the demo, and I was genuinely impressed. For what I thought was going to be something quite simple became really complicated and complex quite quickly, but in an understandable way that let you be quite freeform in how you was going to answer and deal with the outcome and your solution. The other cool thing about this is that you passively earn income, which then allows you to, so long as you've got people connected, obviously, that then allows you to slowly save up, so it gives you more options. So you can kind of go for a speedrun style of playing this game, or you can be slower and more strategic and kind of eventually get your way to a win, but it pays to be more strategic and fun, and that's probably how I'll play The Cable Guy when it comes out and I buy it, you guessed it, on day one. The next game on this list is called Nullptr, or Nullptr, and the idea behind this is that you're hacking various different terminals. And I was debating actually when I played this whether or not it was an action game or a puzzle game, because what you're doing is trying to move your little icon around different security circuits, but some require you to tap into terminals and unlock them, which then unlock gates for other terminals, and you have to kind of backtrack. You have to dodge and avoid security sentinels as they go around. So it really is almost like a time trial or against the clock puzzle platformer, but from a 2D top-down perspective. This game, because of its bite-sized level structure and the way how it just kept introducing new things constantly all the time, had me hooked. And because like a level could sometimes last 15 seconds or a minute, and you was having to like strategically work out how to unlock door after door after door, it felt like a a 2D top-down escape room, but I really enjoyed it. And again, never heard of this game beforehand. We'll be picking this up on day one because it got under my skin and I had to complete the demo. Next up is a game called Omnibullet. Again, not one I'd heard of beforehand. And this game is a bit like a tower defense game, but also as a puzzler game that's a bit like an automation game. Your task is to charge up batteries on a conveyor belt, and the conveyor belts will kind of snake their way around the level, and you can only place your turrets to shoot bullets that charge these batteries in strategic places that are available to you. So that's why it felt a bit like a tower defense game. But what you've got to do is organise your turrets in a way that when it shoots bullets, it goes through all of these different things that can magnify the damage for it, for example, or it might repeat it and then shoot it out the sides as 2 bullets or something like that. And it's how you chain all of this together like an automation machine that then allows the bullets to become so powerful that they charge the batteries quick enough so that the batteries then don't reach the end of the conveyor belt and go in the bin. So that's why I'm like, it's an automation tower defense game, because it's the perfect merger of the two. And it made you kind of re-scramble your brain as you was going through the levels, because sometimes like really obvious choices aren't the most efficient way of doing something. So yeah, you can really go for different solutions and be right, but there's probably some that are even better scores than others, for example. Had great fun with this, really good proof of concept demo. We'll be picking this up on release too. Next up is called Paint, with a exclamation mark for the eye, and this is a puzzle platformer that looked exceptionally cute. I picked this up, or I put this on my wish list actually to pick up before Steam Next Fest came out, because I really like the art style of it being all very hand drawn, and I'm always drawn to that type of aesthetic anyway, the crayon effect, and that kind of carries through, because what you're doing is changing the colour of what you can stand on and what you can walk through by tapping different colour paint pots, and then picking up a brush so that you can be able to do other stuff with it. And it's quite a traditional puzzle platformer, but the levels were really well thought out, and I found it engaging, very visually stimulating, and although it wasn't doing anything like massively unique and new, I still came away with a happy grin and a smile on my face, so warrant staying on my wish list for that. Sticking with the paint theme is Paint by Cubes, and this game kind of reminded me a little bit of Devil Dice and Cooler World-ish, but not really. That's probably not very helpful. But you roll around this cube to paint the different tiles on the screen. You can see the different colours that are there, but you can see that the WASD controls, it depends on which way you move the cube as to what colour it paints. And so what you're trying to do is reverse engineer the level so that you roll around and paint the right cubes in the right way. Because if you go back over something, it wipes the paint off and either paints it with the new colour on or just leaves it blank. So you really have to plan out all of your moves and make sure that you do everything nicely. Because if you do it wrong, then something will be left behind and then you start like unpainting things as you move back to solve it. So I found this game oddly difficult but very enjoyable, and yeah, it was like Rubik's Cubes meet Devil Dice, and that's no bad thing. So Paint by Cubes will be definitely a game that I'll be picking up, and it's coming out later this month, so yay. The next game on this list is called Planetiles, and it felt a little bit like a 3D-ish Dofromantic, but when I got playing with it properly, it didn't. It has the same kind of gameplay setup where you're being given these tetromino style tiles for you to try and place down in a different environment, and doing so in certain ways then allows the world to form itself. So like putting together lots of different trees will then form a forest, lots of sand builds out like a desert, and then you can put it around some water to create like a proper oasis, and this all scores you points, which then allows you to have more tiles to do more things with. There's other like special tiles that you can unlock as you play the game more and more and start to level up. You get different abilities that allow you to kind of fill in the gaps, because sometimes just because you're using tetronymos, easy for me to say, you kind of find yourself with gaps and weird things that you can't fill, so you can use your special moves to fill that in. The only thing I would say about this game and I think this must be a me thing, because sometimes I do have some proper thick moments, was that I was running out of tiles really early in levels, and I didn't understand why, because I was putting all of these different things together and creating forests and oases and mountains and volcanoes, all these kind of things, but I wasn't really gaining any tiles back. And so I wasn't getting high scores, which was then causing me to take ages to level up. So I was clearly missing something here, but I was still enjoying myself. And so it absolutely stays on my wish list, but I need to investigate more in some of the actual like gameplay dynamics, because something was lost on me and it wasn't made clear in the tutorial and introduction. Next up on this list is Sling Puzzle Gravity Master. Now, this game is a little bit like a mini golf puzzle game, but what really intrigued me with this is that all of the levels are built around 3D environments where gravity is warped and confusing. So a little bit like David Bowie running around that labyrinth at the end of Labyrinth with the big maze, where he would like step off and then like flip down underneath and then gravity reverses itself. The same thing happens here. And so you're like teeing off and rolling around this cool magical animal, but then the levels are designed so that like you roll off an edge and it flips around and you back the other side, or you might golf up a wall and the ball then sticks to the wall because gravity is flipped. This didn't get old in the demo. I do wonder, and this will be purely down to good and varied level design in the full game, whether or not this will have the staying distance. But the demo was really well put together and I had great fun with it. The controls were really simple and easy. It felt like it was probably built for touchscreen first, and that was my only real criticism of this game. But I had great fun playing it and definitely staying on my wish list. It'll be that kind of thing where I'll pick up this game purely for like 10-minute de-stress moments before moving on to something else. But it definitely serves a purpose and a niche for me. Next up is the first of two sneaky games, and it's called Sneak Out. And this game is already released, and I've already got it in my basket to pick up. So there we go. This game is about you trying to sneak out of your house without being caught by your parents or your yappy bloody dog. And what you're doing is like sneaking around and watching everyone go around their day. And it seems to be randomized whenever you go in, because I played this demo several times, and each time I did it, the parents were in slightly different routines and different locations, doing different things, but my goal was still the same. And so it felt like there was quite a lot of replayability here, because sometimes I'd have to go and like hide in the bedroom or hide in the living room or hide in the bathroom. Or I might need to get like a tennis ball out to throw to try and get the dog out of the way so that I could then run in through the kitchen and get to the car, then realise that probably wasn't where I wanted to be anyway, and then try and back out of it without causing problems for the parents. There's 10 levels in the full game. I didn't actually win the demo at all, but I had great fun trying out all different moves and ways of doing it. And as I said, it's in my basket ready to pick up at the end of the weekend. So it will be purchased too. Thumbs up. The second sneaky game is Girlfriend from Hell, and you play as the girlfriend from hell. And the idea is that you're laying traps for your boyfriend inside his house, just to cause him pain because he'd rather play video games than talk to you. Relatable! So, what you do is set up like bear traps to catch his legs, or marbles on the floor to make him stack it. You can pick up like saws and try and attack it from other things from that. But the key with this is that it doesn't really tell you like explicitly what things you can do with the different weapons that you've got. And quite often you're left with really tight time limits, and you have to like hide in his wardrobe or in the fridge or something like that to try and like wait for him to go. And there was such a strict time limit that I kept failing out of this after the first level in the demo. There was a couple of levels for you to try and do. I could only do the first one. I found the premise absolutely superb. The controls were a little bit woolly around the edges and a bit tricky to get used to, but this is definitely a rough solo devved diamond in waiting, because good aesthetics, great idea, stupid humour, ridiculously sadistic traps. I really enjoyed myself with it. It stays on my wish list, and I look forward to seeing it in a much more fully fleshed format later on. The next game might sound weird to include in here, but it's Regency Solitaire 2. I follow this developer on Twitter. I find him immensely funny because he's taken the mick out of himself because he's spent so long building a solitaire game. He's like, I can't believe I've I've spent 2 years of my life trying to build a solitaire game. Does this win an award for the longest solitaire sequel creation ever? No one's going to buy it anyway. Well, I'm here to say that it's a good solitaire game. It's got lots of ridiculous send-ups of like Downton Abbey style drama and intrigue from high society from the past, but plenty of good solitaire spin on things. And yeah, if you're in the need for a well-crafted solitaire card game, you could do much worse than picking up Regency Solitaire 2. And I'll probably pick up, if there's a bundle, both to support the dev, because I find him entertaining immensely on Twitter and very self-depreciating. Next up is Aarik and the Ruined Kingdom. And I came to this one thinking, Monument Valley much? And it is, but it does do some other things too. And what I really liked about this was that it starts off very Monument Valley in that you're moving the environment around so that it reconnects paths like Monument Valley, like Echo Chrome and Echo Shift, so that as you kind of manipulate things around, the perspective changes so paths that weren't created now are, so that you can walk across them, all of that kind of stuff. What I liked about Aarik and the Ruined Kingdom, though, was that it then took that a step further and started doing things where as you twist the environment around, like cogs of machines started to click together that didn't exist beforehand, which then caused environmental traps and things to start moving. And so it felt like an extension from where Monument Valley left off, and that's what intrigued me with this game, and it's why it's staying on my wishlist, and I'll likely pick it up. Shroomtopia is next, and this is a game all around cascading water and what you do with it. Each level sees you in like a tiered mountain or hillside, and there's different coloured mushrooms that are waiting to blossom and bloom. And what you're doing is taking away elements of the rock around to see where the water will then flow and fill up and pool. Because when you do that, it then allows you to then start growing mushrooms, and sometimes you'll need to chain mushrooms together so that one can then grow next to another one, so that it can then get next to a pool of water that you then create to then kind of move the mushrooms along so that everything spawns. And that's the game, basically. The demo was really quite lengthy, but it also was quite repetitive in that the level design kind of showed a few ideas and then didn't go too far beyond a lot of that. So I have some question marks about how far the game will push this concept, but it's a good concept. I'm a sucker for anything to do with moving water in a game. Don't ask me why. I love the concept of it. It feels like one of those things where gaming hasn't still quite got used to like flooding and filling up of things really well. And whilst this doesn't necessarily do that in like a ooh way, I quite like the physics behind all of this. So thumbs up from me, with a question mark over how far it will push the concept in the full game. Talking of pushing something in a concept though, this side up hurt my brain. This was probably, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, the hardest game on this puzzle collection. And it's because you're having to control multiple things at the same time. But I was having to do it with keyboard controls and I really struggle. The idea with this side up is that you are not an Amazon parcel worker and you've got to either play as someone who is pushing boxes around so that they can move into different slots, or it might be that you're playing as a parcel and a parcel worker that's pushing around different things so that they all align and hit their outline that they need to be in at the same time. Think of Thomas Was Alone, but everyone's gravity is different, and you'll be part way there, because depending on where the sides of the puzzles are and what gravity wall they're going to, or north, east, south or west, that's where their gravity is. And this was why it was so difficult to deal with multiple gravity planes and multiple controls at the same time. My poor little blonde Essex brain was at its maximum capacity. So I think if you can deal with and really love those kind of dexterity puzzles, this side up is probably the best choice for you on this list. It's only slightly further down for me because this was like hurting my brain in a good way, and it's still on my wish list, but it just kind of made me go, ah. Kubikon 3D is the last game that stays on my wish list on this list. And I had good fun with this actually. And it looks like it's going to be a proper meaty game. The idea is that you've got these different layouts of a board game with various different blocks. And it's a slider puzzle. And I usually detest slider puzzles. But I found that Kubikon 3D was an acceptable one because it felt more like a board game than a slider puzzle. This might just be a mental gymnastics thing for me, but what you're having to do is to get the coloured blocks from the centre of the board to wherever the kind of goal is for those blocks elsewhere. And what I really liked about this is that it's always just a giant 3D arena, but the layouts are just different for every single level, and it really has to make you think because you quite often have to set up like pretend walls to then have other cubes bounce off of and move on to, and then you're like, well, what do I do with the last few? So you have to always plan ahead. And yeah, I spent quite a lot of time in the Kubikon 3D demo, more than I care to admit, and that's why it's staying on my wish list and will be absolutely picked up, even though it's a slider puzzle and I generally hate those. So it's doing something right. These next 6 games are games that have not stayed on my wish list, but they're not staying on it for a variety of reasons. The first one is Inoutpath, and the reason for this not staying on my wish list is because I didn't enjoy the puzzle design for this, nor the way how the gameplay just kind of worked. And it's because you're moving around a path trying to get from entry to exit with various animals doing different things for you to avoid. But it forces you to play with a controller, but there's no dead zone, and my controller is very sensitive, so it started pushing me off in weird directions, which was annoying. But it also was one of those games where there's multiple things that are all being timed, but the timing seems to be on purpose really annoying, so that you only have like a couple of goes to get it right, and then you'll be stuck waiting for ages for it to then correct itself to give you an opportunity and a window to go again. But when you reset levels, it didn't reset fully and properly, so I kept running into levels that were just broken, that I couldn't do. And so Inoutpath just became a bit frustrating for me, and I removed it from my wish list. The next game that I removed from my wish list is Flow of Sound. And this is a 3D manipulation puzzler. So you have all of these different orbs that represent different instruments and sound that you need to funnel from its entry to its exit. But you'll be doing that by moving and twisting and turning various different blocks so that you funnel the sound in the right way. My problem with this game wasn't the actual gameplay and what we're trying to do. And you know me, I love rhythm and music games, so this should have been right up my street. But it was so woolly, I think, because everything was too floaty. It was really difficult to funnel things in correctly, and it just felt like I was smashing everything into itself and not really. The winning didn't feel earned. It just felt like I'd accidentally happenstanced into a solution. And I didn't really get any satisfaction or joy out of that, despite the fact that music would come to life when that all happened. And I had lots of like 50 to 100 nice little coloured balls flying around everywhere, looking like it wanted to be a fluid simulator. But yeah, this one just didn't click for me at all. And so sadly, I removed it from my wish list. The next game on this list is Doodle Harmony Ghosts, and this looked really cool, but I didn't really read what the game's about. It's a pair matching game, and so whilst I have nothing bad to say about Doodle Harmony Ghosts, it is literally match the shadow of the ghost to the ghost on the page. And so whilst this will probably appeal to quite a lot of people, and there was nothing wrong with it, it was good at what it did, I'm not a fan of pure hidden object or pure like pair matching games, so it just wouldn't be something that I'd pick up. But I like the art style, and that's what made me download the demo, so thumbs up for that. And if you enjoy those types of games, Doodle Harmony Ghosts would be good for you. It just isn't something that would interest me. Next together is Exodus. And this game I think is probably the most frustrating remove from wishlist out of the whole lot. And that's because I really loved the premise of this, but it was just incomprehensible to play. You play as the Hand of God, almost like you're playing a Populous game, but what you're trying to do is to save your character from the Egyptians who are trying to kill it. And you do this by manipulating the world around you with your Hand of God. So if you grab the sand, it will pull it up and it will create a hill. Or you can push down so that it will create like a valley in water before the waters then kind of stop parting and come in and wash people away. But it was so difficult to control and so freeform in the way how you could do something, but with zero time limit to experiment. All I was doing was hitting retry, and struggling with a really poor control system that I just couldn't get on top of and didn't really do what I was thinking it was doing. So whilst I really appreciate that this is an experimental and off-the-wall and unhinged experience and game, it needs to still play well in order to hook people in. Maybe this is something we can come back to at a later point and see whether or not it's been refined, but at the time being, I had such a visceral to it as I tried to wrestle this game to the ground that I didn't find it fun, and so I removed it from my wish list. The second last game suffers from exactly the same problem, poor controls, and it's piecing it together. This is a 3D jigsaw puzzle, a bit like Puzzling Places, but not in VR. And it's really interesting on the Steam forums. Everyone's like, why isn't this in VR? And I totally get why you would want to market a traditionally VR-only experience as a non-VR game. But the forced keyboard controls is where this game is really falling down, and it needs to have controller controls so that you can manipulate things nicely in 3D using analog sticks so that you can have more control, or have much better mouse control so that you can really rotate things around and piece it together. The problem with this game is that whenever you go in to try and build something, you need to be so perfect in how you've interlocked something for the game to actually give it to you that I spent about 80% of this demo kind of working out that my perspective was slightly off and I needed to shift things back and forth ever so slightly to try and get like two stems of a rose together. And it was just frustrating and very slow and annoying. And whilst this tries to market itself as a nice cozy jigsaw game, I was raging after 5 minutes, and it didn't get any easier or any better. And so I gave up in the end and uninstalled it. The last game is also incomprehensible in my personal opinion, and it's called Mycelium Heaven. This game is around mushrooms and like decay, and so it places you in this grid environment. It just kind of goes, work it out for yourself. And I'm like, your gameplay mechanics are not strong enough to work it out for yourself. And so I uninstalled and didn't continue. And the reason why is because after the first couple of levels where it feels like you can maneuver decay and maggoty type goodness from soil grid to soil grid so that you can then make this body kind of be all consumed, because you're trying to like get the skeleton consumed in each level. Those mechanics didn't seem to stay the same after like level 3, but it didn't tell you what had changed and I couldn't work it out. And so I just kind of hit a brick wall, and I thought, if you're going to do a work it out for yourself, your gameplay mechanics need to have a tutorial that allows you to learn by doing, not just constantly fail and just drive you up the wall. So I think that's a really poor design decision choice, and it's overestimating how obvious they think that their gameplay system is, because it wasn't obvious to me, and I'm not thick. He says. Anyway, that's the last moan. As you can see though, 19 games staying on my wish list. Most of them will be things that I'll pick up immediately. You'll see a lot of these games popping up in reviews as I buy them at a later point. Please let me know down in the comments if there was any games in particular that you enjoyed or wanted to add to your wish list. And I hope I've been helpful throughout Steam Next Fest February 2024. Apologies it was only 3 videos, but I've got an awful lot of personal stuff going on at the moment, so I'm really struggling for time and doing these videos at like 3 in the morning. So please be kind. Thanks very much. Catch you soon. Bye. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.